Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back, and welcome to those of you joining us for the first time. Tonight is the second night of Muharram, and the second night of our series on Shahada, witness. Last night we stood at the beginning, with the first witness of all. Tonight we follow the thread forward, through the prophets, across the generations, down the oldest covenant on earth. Make yourselves comfortable and quieten your heart. And if you're with us for the first time, a like, as we begin, is a small kindness that carries these nights further than you'd think. Now let us begin. Bismillah. We begin, as always, with the Word of God. Please give your attention to tonight's verses, chosen to open the theme of the covenant and the chain of witness that runs through the prophets. Let us listen.
In the name of God, the most merciful, the most compassionate. And when your Lord took from the children of Adam, from their loins, their descendants, and he made them bear witness over themselves, Am I not your Lord? They said, Yes, indeed, we bear witness, this, lest you should say on the day of resurrection, Indeed, we were unaware of this. Quran, Surat Al-A'raf, the chapter of the heights, 7, verse 172. And Noah called to his son, who was standing apart, O my son, board with us, and do not be with the disbelievers. He said, I will take refuge on the mountain. It will protect me from the water. Noah said, There is no protector today from the decree of God, except for those on whom he has mercy. And the wave came between them, and he was among those who drowned. Quran, Surah Hud, the chapter of Hud, 11, verses 42 to 43.
And now our couplets for the night. A few lines of poetry to carry the theme inward. Let them breathe.
They ask me why. Why do I shun the glitter of the world? Its offer of wealth and power in exchange for suppressing my voice against injustice. How do I explain that the poor isn't cultural, nor only the faith-based upbringing, that the natural devotion is steeped back in time way before the soul had a body, that when the Lord asked, Am I not your Lord? Yes, indeed, I bear witness, the humble soul responded. The witness is the struggle, a struggle for justice. Justice for all, come what may. For how can the voice be silenced that promised its Lord even before it was forged?
It is now my privilege to invite our speaker, Shaykh Shabbir Hassanally, for tonight's sermon, The Oldest Covenant on Earth, on the unbroken chain of witness handed down through the prophets of God. As before, the sermon would move seamlessly into the Maqtal. Tonight, the inherited tear, the sorrow carried in the heart of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and we'll close with a supplication. Let us stay with the Shaykh through all of it. Please welcome Shaykh Shabbir Hassanally.
It's good we start with Surah Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, maliki yawmiddin, iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'een. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين صدق الله العلي العظيم أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعن الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين آمين يا رب العالمين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم منا جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر الأهد منا لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Peace be upon you, O Abu Abdullah, and upon the souls who have gathered in your courtyard. Upon you from us all is the peace of God forever, for as long as we remain and as long as night and day endure. And may God never make this our last pledge to visit you. Peace be upon Al-Husayn, and upon Ali, the son of Husayn, and upon the children of Husayn, and upon the companions of Husayn. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So last night we recovered a word. We said martyr does not mean victim. It means witness. We traced it back to its root, to a field outside Eden, to a man named Abel, who stood where Imam Hussein would one day stand, and who said what Imam Hussein would one day say: I will not raise my hand against you. I fear God, the Lord of all creation. We heard Allama Tabatabai explain that Abel's words were not the words of a frightened man, but a conscious, knowing testimony. And we heard Shaykh Mutahari indict the preacher who turns the master of witnesses into a victim by narrating Karbala as though Imam Hussein simply lost his life in vain. Tonight, God willing, we go deeper. Not to another field, but to before the field, to before the body. The Quran tells us that every soul, before it was given a body, was gathered before its Lord and asked a single question. And every soul answered. And that answer, spoken in a language older than any language, is the oldest Shahada of all existence. In Quran, Surah Al-A'raf, the 7th chapter of the Quran, the chapter of the heights, verse number 172, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, and when your Lord took from the children of Adam, from their loins, their descendants, and He made them bear witness over themselves, am I not your Lord? They said, yes, indeed, we bear witness. This, lest you should say on the day of resurrection, indeed we were unaware of this. Think about this verse. Let it settle. It describes something that happened at the root of every human existence. God gathered every soul that would ever live, and He asked them a simple question. Not a question of doctrine, not a question of law, but a question of recognition. Am I not your Lord? And every soul answered, yes, indeed. Shahidna, we bear witness. That answer, Shahidna, we bear witness, is the same root, the same word, the same act that Abel performed in the field, that every prophet after him carried, and that Imam al-Hussein completed at Karbala. The word Shahida, to witness, appears here not as a human invention, not as a religious obligation imposed from the outside, but as the first thing every soul ever said. Before the body, before the cradle, every soul has already testified. Allama Tabatabai, in his commentary on this verse in Al-Mizan, identifies three events, and of course the references are all in the write-up. God separated the children of Adam from one another, drawing them out as individual souls. He made each witness over themselves, not over each other, not over a doctrine, but over their own nature. And He asked them, am I not your Lord? Allama writes, God's purpose was that they may witness His Lordship, so that they would testify to it whenever questioned about it. The verse, Allama explains, is not describing a historical event that happened once and was forgotten. He is describing the permanent condition of every soul. Every human being carries within them, whether they know it or they don't, the testimony they gave before they were born. The question of this life, the question of this Muharram, is whether we remember it. The question is not whether you are a witness. You are already one, by the testimony that you gave before you were even born. The question is whether you remember and whether you honor what you said. Please give me a salawat and we move on to the imprint of the covenant, what the fitra carries.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
The Quran gives us a second verse that completes this picture. This is from Surah Al-Rum, the chapter of the Romans, 30th chapter of the Quran, and verse number 30. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Set your face towards the religion in natural devotion, the nature made by God in which He has made mankind. There is no altering of God's creation. That is the upright religion, but most people do not know. The word here is fitra, the innate nature, the original disposition. It is the imprint of the covenant. Every child is born with it. It is the reason a human being, even one who has never heard the word Shahada, who has never set foot in a mosque, feels within themselves a pull towards the truth and a revulsion from injustice. That pull and revulsion is not culture. It is not upbringing. It is the echo of the yes, still reverberating in the chest from before the body was ever made. The Imams teach that the covenant of Surah A'raf is not a one-time event locked in pre-eternity. It is the foundation of what it means to be a human. Abdullah ibn Sinan, one of the companions of Imam Sadiq, asked Imam Sadiq about the verse of the fitrah. And Imam answered as follows. And like I said, all of the references and citations are in the write-up. Imam Sadiq answered, it is submission. God shaped them according to monotheism when He took their covenant, saying, am I not your Lord? And this included both the believers and the disbelievers. The fitrah, the innate nature every child is born with, is the covenant. It's not the memory of the covenant, but it is the covenant itself, written into the very structure of what it means to be a human. And every time a believer pronounces the Shahadatain, the I bear witness there is no God but God, and I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of God, they are not inventing a new testimony. Rather, they're remembering the one that they already gave. Every time we say Ashhadu, we are echoing a voice older than our own bodies, older than our parents, older than the earth and the universe itself. This is what makes witness universal. It is not a Muslim invention. It is a human inheritance. And it is why, when we trace the chain of witnesses tonight through the prophets, every tradition that has met God will be found producing witnesses, because every soul that has ever lived made the same testimony before it was born. Please give me a salawat and we move on to the main point, which is the prophetic chain of grief.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Muhammad.
So this covenant is universal. Every soul has said it. But God did not leave the testimony to echo alone in ordinary hearts. He sent prophets to remind them. And what we find when we look at those prophets carefully is that they were not only reminding, they were weeping. The chain of witnesses from Abel to Imam al-Husayn and beyond is not a mere metaphor. It is, in the theology of Ahl al-Bayt, a literal inheritance. Every prophet inherited the covenant, carried it, testified to it, and in many cases suffered for it. And woven through this chain is a thread of grief that runs from the first prophet to the last, and from the last prophet to his grandson and indeed beyond. We will trace 8 links tonight, enough to feel the weight of the chain, enough to understand that when we weep for Imam al-Husayn, we are not the first to weep. We begin where we ended yesterday. Abel, peace and blessings be upon him, stands at the head of this chain. He is the first witness. His testimony, I will not raise my hand against you, I fear God, the Lord of all creation, is the seed from which every testimony after him grows. We spent the whole of last night with him. Tonight he stands in his place at the beginning, and we continue forward. The second is Noah, the father who could not save the son who would not listen. The Quran preserves one of the most painful moments in the history of prophethood. In Quran, Surah Al-Hud, the chapter of Prophet Hud, 11th chapter of the Quran, verses 42 to 43. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, And Noah called to his son, who was standing apart, O my son, board with us and do not be with the disbelievers. He, his son, said, I will take refuge on a mountain. It will protect me from the water. Noah said, there is no protector today from the decree of God, except for those upon whom he has mercy. And the waves came between them, and he was among those who drowned. Noah is a witness who was answered with a flood, and who lost a child to the refusal of the truth. The grief here is not the grief of persecution. It is the grief of a father who stands on the ark with the truth in his hand and watches his own son choose the mountain instead. The mountain that will not save him. Allama Tabatabai pauses on this in Tafsir al-Mizan. Noah, he explains, was one of the Ulul Azm, the resolute, the highest rank of prophets. He had just witnessed the full manifestation of God's lordship in the flood. And yet, driven by what Allama Tabatabai calls a deep longing and sorrow for his son, he called out to God. Allama writes in Al-Mizan, driven by a deep longing and sorrow for his son, Noah raised his voice to God in supplication. The text does not say he asked, said, or prayed, but rather he called out, which reflects the outcry of a desperate person facing intense distress. And God's answer was devastating. And the answer is in Surah Hud again, the 11th chapter of the Quran, the chapter of Prophet Hud, verse 46. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, He said, O Noah, indeed he is not of your family. Indeed he is unrighteous conduct. The son who chooses the mountain over the truth has severed himself from the family of the prophets by his own choice. The family of the witness, Allama shows us, is not defined by blood alone. Rather, it is defined by righteousness. A son who carries the blood of a prophet but refuses the truth has placed himself outside of the covenant, and the waves will not spare him for the name that he carries. This is the first note in the prophetic chain of parental grief. The grief that runs all the way to the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, his family and righteous companions, weeping over the dust of Karbala. The prophets do not only suffer at the hands of distant strangers, they suffer at the hands of those who were close enough to know the truth and chose the mountain instead. And the principle Noah's son teaches us is that the covenant must be carried, not merely inherited. This is so important that we must pause on it before we continue. Noah's son teaches us something our community must carry. The covenant is not a birthright. It is not a passport stamped once and valid forever. It is not a guarantee earned by proximity to a prophet or by a famous ancestor or by a glorious past. It is a daily, active struggle, what the tradition calls jihad al-nafs, the struggle with the self. And the moment that struggle is abandoned, the covenant is forfeit, regardless of who your father was. The scholars of the Hausa discuss this under the heading of Ruyesh-ha and Rizesh-ha, new growths and fallouts. In every generation, the community produces people who grow towards the truth and people who fall away. And the fall is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is the slow, quiet erosion of a man who was once close to the truth and let the world pull him away, one compromise at a time. Imam Khomeini, may God rest his pure soul, distilled this principle into a single sentence in his last will and testament, and he said, the criteria for evaluating anyone is their current state. Not their history, not their lineage, not the battles they once fought or the company they once kept. Their current state, where they stand now. This is the lesson of Noah's son, and it is the lesson of Karbala. At Karbala itself, the Banu Hashim, the Prophet's immediate clan and family and direct household, stood entirely with Imam Hussein. Not one of them crossed over to the other side. But those connected to the Prophet and his household through the broader tribe of Quraysh, through companionship and through tribal marriage, some of them stood in the army that killed him. Consider Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas, one of the earliest companions of the Prophet. He was counted amongst the Prophet's maternal uncles by tribal right through a family called Banu Zuhra, the clan that was the same family as the Prophet's mother. The Shia biographical authority, Sayyid Muhsin al-Amin, confirms it. The Banu Zuhra are the maternal uncles of the Prophet because his mother, Sayyidah Amina, was from them. And yet, Sa'ad's son, Umar ibn Sa'ad, was the man who commanded the army that killed Imam al-Hussein, the man who ordered the first arrow to be shot. Or consider Shimr ibn Dhil Jawshan, who had tribal ties to Imam Ali's household through the family known as Banu Kilab, the same tribe as Sayyidah al-Banin, the mother of Abul Fadl Abbas. On the day of Ashura, Shimr approached the camp and offered safe conduct to Abbas and his full brothers, calling them his nephews in the tribal sense. Al-Abbas, peace and blessings be upon him, rejected the offer with a fierceness that has echoed for 14 centuries. The tribal ties were real. The covenant had been broken, and blood without covenant saves no one. And consider the Umayyads themselves. Yazid and Imam al-Hussein shared the same Qurayshi blood. Both of them descended from Abd Manaf, whose twin sons Hashim and Abd al-Shams founded the two rival branches of the tribe. Some have tried to use this in order to reduce Karbala to a family dispute, a quarrel between cousins over who should rule. This is not a misunderstanding, it is a distortion. The oldest trick in the book of the one who mutilated Hamza at Uhud. Karbala was not a family quarrel. The shared blood between Imam Hussein and Yazid makes it something far more devastating. It makes it the proof that blood, lineage, tribe, and name mean nothing. Nothing when the covenant is broken. And consider, perhaps most powerfully, the case of Zubayr ibn Awam, a man Imam Khomeini used as the defining example of this principle. Zubayr was the Prophet's cousin. He was known as the Sword of Islam. He defended Imam Ali at the very first hour after the Prophet's passing, protesting at Saqifa against those who seized the caliphate. And yet decades later, at the Battle of Jamal, Zubayr drew his sword against the same Ali that he had once defended. The world had worked on him. The desires had crept in. The covenant had been abandoned, not in a single dramatic moment, but in the slow accumulation of compromise and ambition. Imam Khamenei, may God rest his pure soul, explained this with a clarity that truly cuts to the bone. He said, anyone would have faced doubts when confronting a personality like Zubayr or Talha. This Zubayr was someone who, during the time of the Prophet, was among the most prominent personalities, the Prophet's cousin, and close to him. Even after the Prophet's era, he was among those who protested at Saqifa in defense of the commander of the faithful. Yes, the verdict on piety and intoxication is based entirely on the final end. May God make all of our ends good. Sometimes worldliness, various circumstances, and the allurements of the world leave such impacts, such changes. And in a later address, Imam Khamenei further crystallizes the principle, saying, the decisive confrontation of the commander of the faithful with Talha and Zubayr is a historic example of the necessity to focus on the current state of individuals in any judgment and evaluation. References are all in the write-up. Noah's son chose the mountain. Zubayr chose the world. Umar ibn Sa'ad chose the governor's promise of a province. Shimr chose the wrong army. And in each case, the blood they carried, the names they bore, none of it saved them. The criterion, as Imam Khomeini told us, is the current state. And the question the covenant asks every morning is the question it has been asking since before the body was made. Where do you stand now? Moving on, Prophet Ibrahim, the blade that did not fall. Abraham, peace and blessings be upon him, carries the covenant more explicitly than any prophet before the final messenger. He surrendered everything, homeland, father's house, comfort, safety, for the sake of the testimony he had made before he was born. And it is Abraham who gave the covenant its most famous spoken form. In Quran, Surah Al-An'am, the chapter of the cattle, 6th chapter of the Quran, verses 162 to 163, Allah immortalizes the covenant of Abraham, which says, "Say, my prayer, my sacrifice, my living, and my dying are all for God, the Lord of all creation. He has no partner. This is what I have been commanded, and I am the first of those who submit. My prayer, my sacrifice, my living, and my dying, all for God." This is the covenant of Surah A'raf, spoken aloud in the voice of a prophet. When every soul said, "Yes, we bear witness," before the body was made, this is what the yes meant. Abraham is not inventing a new commitment. He's remembering the oldest one, the one written into his fitrah, and speaking it where the world can hear it. And it is the same declaration that Imam Husayn will embody at Karbala. Imam Husayn does not merely quote Abraham. He is Abraham's covenant fulfilled. The blade that was stayed on the mountain, the son who was ransomed, the blood that was deferred, all of it arrives at the plain of Karbala. God ransomed Ishmael with a great sacrifice. In Quran, Surah Safat, the chapter of those ranged in rows, 37th chapter of the Quran, verse 107, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "And we ransomed him with a great sacrifice," or dhibhin azim. What is this great sacrifice, this dhibhin azim? On the surface, the historical meaning is the heavenly ram God sent to replace Ishmael on the stone. But the narrations of Ahl al-Bayt take us deeper. And the most explicit comes from Imam al-Rida, peace and blessings be upon him, as recorded by Shaykh Saduq. When God ransomed Ishmael, Abraham felt a pang of grief, not relief, but grief, because he wished he could have experienced the ultimate test, so that he might attain the highest reward of patience. God then initiated a profound exchange, and all of these references are in the write-up. Imam al-Rida says, God revealed to him, "O Abraham, who among my creation is most beloved to you?" Abraham replied, "O Lord, you have not created anyone more beloved to me than your beloved Muhammad." God then asked, "Would the unjust slaughter of his son at the hands of his enemies ache your heart more, or you slaughtering your own son with your hands in obedience to me?" Abraham said, "O Lord, his slaughter at the hands of his enemies aches my heart more." God then said, "O Abraham, a group claiming to be from the nation of Muhammad will unjustly slaughter his son Husayn after him, just as a ram is slaughtered." Abraham was deeply grieved, his heart ached, and he began to weep. Then God revealed to him, "O Abraham, I have ransomed your grief over your son Ishmael. Had you slaughtered him with your own hands, with your grief over Husayn and his murder. And I have obligated for you the highest degree of those rewarded for afflictions. And that is the word of God. And we ransomed him with a great sacrifice." The reference is, of course, in the writer. God is telling Abraham the blade was stayed not because the test was cancelled, but because it was deferred to a greater sacrifice, a greater grief, a greater witness. The ram was a placeholder. The dhibh al-azim, the ultimate sacrifice, the great sacrifice, is Imam al-Husayn. Ayatollah Jawadi Amali observes that whenever God uses the word azim in the Quran, it denotes a weight beyond ordinary human comprehension. For example, the throne is azim. The Prophet's character is azim. The Day of Judgment is azim. A physical ram cannot bear the word in the divine vocabulary. The great sacrifice must hold cosmic, eternal weight. Ayatollah Jawadi says, and the reference again is in the write-up, Husayn ibn Ali, peace and blessings be upon him, is the slaughtered of God and the great sacrifice, because he sacrificed absolutely everything he possessed in the way of God. Ayatollah Makarim Shirazi, may God protect him, places this in its exegetical form, in its tafsiri form. The Quran carries both a zahir, apparent meaning, and a batin, inner depth. The apparent meaning is, of course, the ram upon the stone. The inner depth is Imam al-Husayn. Both are true. God placed in a single sentence, the ram and the grandson, the mountain and the plain, the blade that was stayed and the blood that would fall. And Imam Khamenei, may God rest his pure soul, distilled it into one line. He said, Imam Husayn is that very great sacrifice that ensured the survival of Islam. The reference is, of course, in the write-up. Abraham's blade did not fall so that Imam Husayn's blood could fall. The chain of witness is a chain of deferred blood. The covenant Abraham spoke out loud, my prayer, my sacrifice, my living and my dying are all for God, is the covenant Imam Husayn honored with his life. Now we move on to John the Baptist. John the Baptist, Yahya ibn Zakaria, peace and blessings be upon him, is one of the prophets the Quran names with a particular tenderness. In Surah Maryam, the chapter of Saint Mary, 19th chapter of the Quran, verses 12 to 15, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, O John, hold firmly to the book, and we granted him wisdom while yet a child, and tenderness from us and purity. And he was God-fearing and dutiful to his parents, and he was not insolent or disobedient. And peace be upon him the day he was born, and the day he dies, and the day he is raised again to life. John was a prophet martyr, beheaded at the order of a king for refusing to issue a religious endorsement for a marriage that violated the law of God. He could have been silent. He chose to speak, and the sword answered him. The connection between John and Imam al-Husayn is not one we have drawn. Imam Husayn drew it himself on the road to Karbala. Imam Zayn al-Abidin, peace and blessings be upon him, narrates, and the reference, of course, is in the write-up. We journeyed with Imam al-Husayn, and he did not halt at any station nor depart from it, except that he remembered Yahya ibn Zakaria, John the Baptist, and his murder. And one day he said, from the insignificance of this world to God is that the head of Yahya ibn Zakaria, John the Baptist, was gifted to a prostitute from among the prostitutes of the children of Israel. Imam Husayn saw his own martyrdom in the mirror of John's. Every stop on the road to Karbala, he thought of the Prophet beheaded for refusing to endorse the unlawful, and he knew he was walking the same path towards the same sword. Ayatollah Jawadi Amali, may God protect him, draws the parallel. The secret of the resemblance between Yahya bin Zakaria, John the Baptist, and Imam Husayn is that both became victims of the rebellion and lust of the rulers of their time. Yahya refused, or John refused, to issue a false religious edict for the unlawful marriage of the king. And Imam Husayn likewise refused to sign off on the false government of Yazid. The blood of both boiled in order to disgrace falsehood. And the narrations preserve an astonishing detail. After John was killed, his blood boiled in a basin and would not settle. It boiled until God sent the army of Nebuchadnezzar, Bukhtanasar, to slaughter 70,000 of the transgressors amongst whom John's blood had been shed. Then, and only then, did John's physical blood settle. But the narrations draw a further distinction. God revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, his family and righteous companions, the following. This is a hadith Qudsi, it's quoted by Shaykh Saduq, the references in the write-up. I took retribution, God is saying, I took retribution for Yahya ibn Zakaria, John the Baptist, with 70,000. And I shall take retribution for the son of your daughter, as in Allah is telling Prophet Muhammad, with 70,000 and 70,000. The retribution for Imam Hussein is double. This is metaphorically speaking, of course. And the narrations tell us something more. John's physical blood settled when the earthly retribution was carried out. But Imam Hussein's blood has not settled. It is still boiling in the veins of history, in the hearts of believers, in the justice that has not yet been fully enacted. And it will not settle until the Imam of the age, may our souls be his ransom, and may God hasten his return, rises to exact the ultimate retribution. The sky itself marks this distinction. The Imams teach us, and again the reference for this is in the write-up, the sky has never wept for anyone except for Yahya ibn Zakaria, John the Baptist, and Hussein ibn Ali. Peace and blessings be upon them both. Two witnesses, a prophet of resistance and an imam of resistance. Two heads severed, and the sky wept for both. Because these two bloods, and only these two, carried a weight the heavens could not bear in silence. Shaykh Mutahari, may God rest his pure soul, takes this from the historical to the living. The blood of the witness, he teaches, does not spill on the ground and vanish. Shaykh Mutahari says, the blood of the martyr is not wasted. The blood of the martyr does not spill onto the ground. Every drop of the martyr's blood turns into hundreds and thousands of drops, indeed into an ocean of blood, and enters the body of society. The blood of Abu Abdullah, Imam Hussein, has not stopped boiling, and it will continue to boil until the day of resurrection. John's blood boiled and it was settled by an earthly army. Imam Hussein's blood boils and it will not be settled until the Imam of the age returns or until the day of resurrection. That is the difference between a prophet martyr and the master of martyrs. And that is why the sky, which has wept for no one else, wept for both of them. Because both bloods belong to the same chain, and the second is the completion of the first. And next we have Zakaria. Zakaria, peace and blessings be upon him, was John's father, and he was the guardian of Saint Mary. He was the man who raised the mother of Jesus in the temple. His martyrdom is one of the most haunting in the prophetic tradition. When the soldiers came for him, a tree split open and received him inside. The very creation of God offered sanctuary to the prophet of God, to the proof of God. But Iblis, or Satan, caught the hem of Zakaria's garment and left it hanging from the bark. And the narration says, and the reference is in the write-up, a tree split open for him and he entered it, but the hem of his garment remained outside. Satan came, took hold of the hem of his garment, and said to the soldiers, "This is the hem of his garment. He has entered this tree." So they called for a saw and sawed the tree in half, and they sawed him along with it. The tree opened and could not save him. The creation of God offered sanctuary, and the enemy of God betrayed it. Zakaria is the witness who finds shelter and is found anyway, sawn through the trunk that tried to hide him, his blood running through the wood. But there's a dimension to Zakaria's story that binds him to Karbala more directly than perhaps any other prophet in the chain. Sa'id ibn Abdullah al-Ash'ari met the awaited Imam. This is while Imam Askari was still alive in Samarra, and we discussed him in one of our sessions on Mahdawiyyah. And Sa'id ibn Abdullah asked the Imam about, or he asked Imam Hassan Askari, and Imam Hassan Askari asked Imam Mahdi to reply about the opening letters that are in Surah Maryam, Kaf, Ha, Ya, Ain, Sad. These are letters at the beginning of the Quran, of the verse. The Imam revealed that these letters are a coded prophecy of Karbala disclosed to Zakaria. When Gabriel taught Zakaria the names of the Prophet's household, Muhammad, Ali, Fatima, Hassan and Hussein, at the mention of the first four, Zakaria found consolation. But at the name of Hussein, something broke in him. The hadith reads, Zakaria said, "O Lord, why is it that when I mention four of them, I find consolation in their names, but when I mention Hussein, My tears flow and my sighs rise. So God revealed to him the story of Husayn. When Zakaria heard this, he did not leave his sanctuary for 3 days. He forbade people from entering upon him, and he devoted himself to weeping and wailing, and he would say, "O my God, will you afflict the apple of the eye of the best of your creation with his son? O my God, will you bring the trial of this calamity to his courtyard?" 3 days. 3 days locked in his sanctuary, weeping, refusing to see anyone, shattered by the knowledge of what would happen to a grandson of a prophet who had not yet been born, on a plane that had not yet been named, in a month and year still centuries away. Ayatollah Jawad Amali draws from this narration a principle that holds the entire chain together, and this is very important. The weeping of the prophets prior to the occurrence of Ashura, such as the weeping of Zakaria, demonstrates that the event of Karbala was not an isolated historical incident in the year 61 years after Hijrah. Rather, it is an ontological and trans-historical reality with which all the friends of God are deeply connected. And the reference is in the write-up. Karbala is not bound by the year 61. It stretches backwards through the prophets just as surely as it stretches forwards through the believers. Zakaria wept for it centuries before it happened. We weep for it 14 centuries after. And the weeping is the same weeping because the event is not historical. It is, as Ayatollah Jawadi Amali says, ontological. It is woven into the structure of creation itself. And Ayatollah Al-Uzma Bahjat, may God rest his pure soul, whose mystical connection to the tragedy of Ashura was renowned among the scholars of Qom, placed this in its widest frame. The reference is in the write-up. Ghaib Bahjat said, "Mourning and weeping for the master of martyrs, peace and blessings be upon him, was established from the time of Prophet Adam and the preceding prophets, including Zakaria, peace and blessings be upon him. These tears are the pathway connecting one to the all-encompassing mercy of God. The tears are not a ritual we invented. They are a practice that the prophets established. And when we weep tonight, we are not starting something. We are joining something, a river of grief that has been flowing since before the body was made, and that will not stop until the Imam of the age rises and settles the account." Please give me a salawat and we move to Jesus, the witness from the cradle, the weeper at Karbala, and the proof against those who would silence him.
اللهم صل على محمد محمد وعجل.
So if Zakaria wept for Imam Hussein before Jesus was born, Jesus himself wept for Imam Hussein on the very ground where it would happen. The narrations tell us that Jesus passed through Karbala. That time it was known as Nainawa, with his disciples. He saw a herd of deer gathered and weeping, and he stopped with them. And the narration says, and the reference of course is in the write-up, Jesus, peace and blessings be upon him, and his disciples passed by Karbala, and they saw a herd of deer gathered there, weeping. So Jesus wept, and the disciples wept, though they did not know why he wept, nor why the deer were weeping. They asked, "O Spirit of God and his word, what makes you weep?" He said, "This is the land where the beloved descendant of the messenger Ahmed will be killed, and its soil is sweeter than musk, because it is the clay of the martyred grandson." The reference, like I said, is in the write-up. The infant who testified from the cradle grew up to walk across Iraq and bear witness to a martyrdom that was still 6 centuries away. The deer knew, the earth knew, and Jesus knew. Jesus, peace and blessings be upon him, is unique in this chain in 3 ways. First, his testimony began before he could walk. St. Mary brings the infant to her people. They accuse her. And the newborn child, still in her arms, speaks. And Allah documents this in the Quran in Surah Maryam, the chapter of St. Mary, 19th chapter of the Quran, verses 30 to 33. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He said, I am a servant of God. He has given me the book and made me a prophet. He has made me blessed wherever I may be, and He has exhorted me to pray and give charity as long as I live, and to be good to my mother. And He has not made me insolent or wretched. And peace be upon me the day I was born, and the day I die, and the day I am raised to life. This is the first act on this earth. His first act, rather, Jesus' first act on this earth is Shahada, or testimony. Before He can stand, He bears witness. The Fitra we spoke of earlier, the covenant written into every soul before the body, in Jesus it breaks through in the very first hours of His life. As Ayatollah Jawadi Amali teaches, the cradle testimony was not merely to exonerate his pure mother. It was the establishment of the hujjah, the proof. The truth of religion does not wait for physical maturity. It speaks when it must. Second, His people attempted to kill Him. The leaders of the children of Israel intended to crucify Him. The intent was there. The crime was attempted. But God intervened. And in Quran, Surah An-Nisa, the chapter of the women, 4th chapter of the Quran, verses 157 to 158, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, They did not kill Him, nor did they crucify Him, but it appeared to them so. And those who differ over it are in doubt about it. They have no knowledge of it except the following of conjecture. And they did not kill Him for certain. Rather, God raised Him into His proximity. God did not let the testimony end. He preserved the witness by raising him beyond the reach of those who would silence him. Ayatollah Makarim Shirazi, may God protect him, connects this directly to the Imam of the age, may our souls be his ransom. Ayatollah Makarim says, God delivered him from the clutches of his enemies and raised him towards himself so that, as a living witness and testifier, he will return at the end of times to bear witness to the truthfulness of the path of the seal of the prophets and his household. Jesus was not raised to end his testimony. He was raised to reserve it, to preserve the living witness for the day he returns to pray behind the Mahdi. The raising is not a withdrawal. It is a deferral. The same divine logic we saw in Abraham's blade stayed not because the sacrifice was cancelled, but because it was deferred to a greater hour. Third, and this connects everything tonight, Jesus himself describes his role in the language of witness. In Surah Al-Ma'idah, the chapter of the table spread, 5th chapter of the Quran, verse 117, Jesus addresses God directly, saying, I was a shahid, a witness over them as long as I was amongst them. But when you took me up, you were the watchful one over them. Jesus uses the word shahid, witness, for himself. He is telling God, I testified as long as I was there. When you raised me, the testimony passed from my tongue to yours. He's a prophet who names himself a witness, who uses the very word that is the title of our series. Listen also to the line that runs from Jesus' cradle testimony to Karbala. From his mother's arms he said, Peace be upon me the day I was born, and the day I die, and the day I am raised again to life. 3 moments of peace: birth, death, and resurrection. Imam al-Rida explains why only these 3 are named. And this is a very interesting hadith. The reference, of course, is in the write-up. Imam al-Rida says, Indeed, the most terrifying moments for this creation are in 3 places. The day one is born and emerges from his mother's womb to see the world. The day one dies and witnesses the hereafter and its people. And the day one is resurrected and sees laws he never saw in the abode of the world. And God the Mighty and Exalted granted peace to John in these 3 places and secured his fear. And Jesus, son of Mary, granted peace to himself in these 3 places. These are 3 moments when the soul is most exposed, most alone with what it has done and what it must face. And for both John and Jesus, God grants peace precisely in these incidents. The witness who has testified truthfully is not abandoned at the threshold. Peace meets him when terror meets everyone else. And the same three moments define every link in this chain, including Imam al-Husayn, whose birth was wept over by the Prophet, whose death was the pivot of human history, and whose raising on the Day of Judgment is the promise every believer carries. And we must not leave Jesus without correcting a misconception. The idea that he was a purely passive figure who offered no resistance. Imam Khamenei, may God rest his pure soul, addressed this directly, saying, Jesus, the son of Mary, peace and blessings be upon them both, was the manifestation of resistance against oppression and corruption. The divine prophets did not merely come to offer advice. They came to struggle against the arrogant powers in their capacity as witnesses over their actions. Jesus is, in the Quranic understanding, a shahid, and a witness is not the one who stands by and observes. A witness is the one who testifies, who confronts, who stands where the world tells him to kneel. Jesus did this from the cradle. He did this at Karbala, weeping over ground that would not receive its blood for another 6 centuries. And he will do it again when he returns at the end of time to pray behind the Imam of the age, may our souls be his ransom. And now we move from the prophets to the household. Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib, peace and blessings be upon him, the Prophet's uncle, the Lion of God. He was killed in the Battle of Uhud. And what was done to him after his death is one of the moments in the history of Islam that the Prophet never forgot. Shaykh al-Mufid records a scene in his well-known book Al-Irshad. Shaykh Mufid writes, when the Messenger of God, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, stood over Hamza, he saw that he had been mutilated. So the Messenger of God wept and said, I shall never be afflicted with a loss like yours ever, and I have never stood in a place that outrages me more than this place. And Hind had cut open the liver of Hamza and chewed upon it, but she was unable to swallow it, so she spat it out. The Prophet stood over his uncle's mutilated body and said he had never been more outraged. Hind bint Utbah, the wife of Abu Sufyan, had cut open Hamza's chest, torn out his liver, and chewed upon it. She could not swallow it, but the hatred made her try. That hatred was passed down through the choices of those who came after her, and it did not stop. And here, for the first time in this series, the line of the oppressor becomes visible. Not as a line of blood, but as a line of choice. Hind is the wife of Abu Sufyan. Abu Sufyan is the father of Muawiyah. Muawiyah is the father of Yazid. The woman who chewed the liver of the Prophet's uncle at Uhud is the grandmother of the man who ordered the killing of the Prophet's grandson at Karbala. 3 generations, the same house, the same hatred, chosen, accepted, and renewed by each in turn. But here we must be careful, because the principle we set out earlier in this sermon cuts in both directions. We said, blood does not save a person. Noah's son carried the blood of a prophet, yet he chose the mountain. Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas' son commanded the army that killed Imam al-Husayn, though his father had been a companion of the Prophet. The covenant must be carried, not inherited. The mirror of that principle is equally as binding. Blood does not condemn a person either. Yazid is not damned because he's Hind bint Utbah's grandson. Yazid is damned because, given the same choice his grandmother had made between the truth and the throne, he made the same choice as her once more. And the Quran names the principle with absolute clarity in Surah Al-An'am, the chapter of the cattle, 6th chapter of the Quran, verse 164. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and no soul earns anything except against itself, and no bearer of burdens shall bear the burden of another. No soul is born condemned. No soul is born saved. The Umayyad line itself proves this. From the same family that produced Muawiyah and Yazid, God brought forth Umar bin Abdul Aziz, the Umayyad Khalif, who when he came to the throne 2 generations later, ended the cursing of the commander of the faithful from the pulpits. He restored Fedek to the family of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra, peace and blessings be upon her, and tried within the limits of what one man can do against an accumulated injustice to repair what his forefathers had broken. The same blood, but the opposite choice. And on the day of Karbala's aftermath inside Yazid's own palace, another voice rose against him. And it was not Sayyidah Zainab's first. It was his own wife. Her name was Hind, but not the Hind who chewed the liver at Uhud. This Hind was Hind bint Abdullah ibn Amir ibn Quraysh. She was married to Yazid himself. At-Tabari, the famous historian, preserves this moment in his well-known Tarikh. He writes, Hind bint Abdullah ibn Amir ibn Quraysh, who was married to Yazid ibn Muawiyah, heard the news. She covered herself with her garment, came out and said, O Commander of the Faithful, is this the head of Al-Husayn, the son of Fatima, daughter of the Messenger of God? He said, yes. Then wail for him and weep for the grandson of the Messenger of God and the pride of Quraysh. Ibn Ziyad hastened against him and killed him. May God destroy him for it. Yazid is saying this. Let that sit. Yazid's own wife, in his own public court, addressed him as Amir al-Mu'mineen, and then in the same breath, naming to his face and to his ministers what he had done to the grandson of the Messenger of God. Of course, we can see he tried to cover himself, but she didn't accept it. And the lamentation tradition has preserved the longer arc of her witness, that she rushed to the court bareheaded in grief, that she went afterward, said Zainab and the captive women, begging forgiveness for her position of comfort while the Prophet's family was in chains, and that she opened the palace of Yazid itself as the first house of formal mourning for the master of witnesses, Azar, mourning, under the very roof of the man who had ordered the killing. Now the Quran gives us an archetype for this type of witness. The woman of faith who lives inside the house of the tyrant and refuses in her own person to be part of the tyranny. In Quran, Surah Tahrim, the chapter of prohibition, 66th chapter of the Quran, verse number 11. And God presents an example for those who have believed. The wife of Pharaoh, when she said, My Lord, build for me near you a house in paradise, and save me from Pharaoh and his deeds, and save me from the wrongdoing people. Hind bint Abdullah in the palace of Damascus stands in the same theological station as Asiya, the wife of Pharaoh, in the palace of Egypt. And I want to be clear that this parallel is my reading of the structural rhyme. The believing woman inside the house of the oppressor asking God for a different house, one roof, two trees. The same blood Yazid carried, his own wife refused. The same lineage Muawiyah passed down, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, 2 generations later, spent his entire caliphate trying to repair. Lineage proposes, the covenant disposes. This is why it said Zainab, peace and blessings be upon her, when she stood in the same court as Yazid sat striking the lips of her brother's severed head with his cane, and identified him by his grandmother's crime, was not making a claim about his genealogy. She was making a claim about his choice. She was telling him, you had every chance to refuse what your fathers built. Your own wife has refused it. Your own kinsman 2 generations after you will refuse it. You, Yazid, chose to extend it. The mouth that chewed the liver and the mouth that strikes the severed head are the same mouth, not because they share blood, because they share willingness. Said Zainab said, and this is recorded in Luhuf and of course the references in the write-up, and how could anyone hope for the safeguarding of the religion from one whose mouth spat out the livers of the pure ones, and whose flesh grew from the blood of the martyrs? And how could one who looks at us, the household, with such visceral hatred and malice, be anything but relentless in his enmity toward us, whose mouth spat out the livers of the pure ones. Said Zainab is naming in Yazid the choice he has remade. He is not Hind bin Utbah's grandson by accident. He is her grandson by election. The hatred did not flow into him through his veins. It was offered to him, and he accepted it, and he made it his own. The scholars of the Hawza speak of this confrontation as the meeting of two trees. The Shajara Tayyaba, the good tree of prophecy, and the Shajara Mal'una, the cursed tree named in the Quran itself. The Umayyad regime in its political form was the historical face of the Shajara Mal'una, the cursed tree. But the trees are not genealogical categories. They are categories of choice. A soul born amongst the Banu Hashim can plant itself in the cursed tree by its conduct. And a soul born among the Umayyads, for example Umar bin Abdul Aziz, can plant itself in the good tree by its repentance. The line is not in the blood. It is in what each generation chooses to do with the blood that it inherits. Shaykh Mutahhari explains that Yazid did not view Karbala as a contemporary political event. He viewed it as the final settling of an inherited score. Not an inheritance of genealogy, but an inheritance of grievance, freely chosen and freely renewed. Shaykh Mutahhari writes, in his court, Yazid explicitly recited poetry demonstrating that his hatred was the inherited hatred of Badr and Uhud. The Umayyads harbored enmity against the mission of the Prophet from the very first day, and Ashura was the revenge of the ignorance, the Jahiliyyah of Abu Sufyan, and Hind against the Islam of the Prophet and Imam Ali. Ashura was not a political dispute. It was the revenge of a pre-Islamic hatred that had never truly accepted Islam. It was forced underground by the Prophet's victory in Mecca, biding its time under Abu Sufyan's reluctant conversion, and resurfacing under Muawiyah's political cunning, and reaching its full unveiled expression in Yazid's court. Imam Khamenei framed this with the clarity of a man who had spent his life fighting the same line. Imam Khamenei writes, the event of Ashura is not a confrontation between two individuals. It is the confrontation of two historical currents and two lines. A line that began with the prophetic mission, and a line that took root in the malice of Abu Sufyan and Hind the Liberator, reaching the absolute peak of its wickedness in the existence of Yazid. The reference, of course, is in the write-up. Two lines, two trees, and the confrontation between them has not ended. It did not end in Uhud, did not end at Karbala, it did not end in the court of Yazid. It continued through every century, through every hand where the line of the oppressor has struck the line of the witness. And in our own lifetime, on the 28th of February 2026, when American missiles fell on a school in the city of Minab in Iran during the month of Ramadan, the name of that school was the Shajara Tayyaba school, the good tree. The same tree the Quran names as the tree of prophecy. 167 or 168 children of the good tree, boys and girls both, though some of the narratives quietly forget the young boys martyred at least equal numbers, were buried beneath the rubble of a building that bore the name of the tree their enemies had been trying to cut down since the day Hind chewed the liver of Hamza at Uhud. The chain of the witness is one chain. The chain of the oppressor is one chain. They have never stopped meeting. And now we arrive at the last link before Imam Hussein himself, and it is the heaviest. Before we proceed, please give me a salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد
صل على محمد وآل محمد.
The narrations record the moment with unbearable precision. The infant Imam al-Hussein entered upon the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, his family and righteous companions, while revelation was descending. Gabriel was present, and Gabriel spoke, saying, and this is logged by Sheikh Mufiddin al-Irshad. He writes, Imam Hussein entered upon the messenger of God while revelation was descending upon him. Gabriel said, O Muhammad, indeed your community will kill this son of yours after you. Then Gabriel gestured with his hand toward the plain of Karbala and brought him red earth, and the messenger of God wept. The Prophet held the earth, red-brown earth, from a plain his grandson had not yet seen, in a land his grandson had not yet walked, soaked with a blood that had not yet been shed. And he wept, not after the event, but before it. The Prophet mourned his grandson while the grandson was still an infant in arms. Then he gave the earth to his wife, Salama, and he instructed her, and this is again logged in by Shaykh Saduq, and the references are all in the write-up. He gave it to Salama and said, place it in a glass bottle and keep your eyes upon it. When it turns into fresh blood, Hussein has been killed. When the day of Ashura arrived, she looked at the glass bottle after the time of noon, and behold, it was fresh blood. So she cried out and she wept. Salama kept the bottle. She kept it through the years, through the death of the Prophet, through the caliphates, through the decades of waiting. And on the 10th of Muharram, 61 years after Hijrah, after the time of the noon prayer, the very hour the narrations tell us that Imam al-Hussein fell, the earth in the bottle turned into fresh blood, and she cried out because she knew. Ayatollah Jawadi Amali pauses on the earth itself, the turba, and draws out what it means that the soil responded. Ayatollah Jawadi says, the earth of Karbala attained its sanctity from the very day Gabriel brought it to the Prophet. The boiling of blood from the earth in the hands of Salama demonstrates that the entirety of creation, even the soil itself, is aware of and mourns the martyrdom of the friend of God. The reference again is in the write-up. The earth knew. The deer at Karbala knew when Jesus walked past. The sky wept and turned red at the horizon when John and Imam Hussein were killed. The creation of God is not indifferent to the blood of the witnesses. It responds, because the witnesses are the proof of God on his earth, and when the proof bleeds, the earth bleeds with it. And the Prophet's tears, the tears he shed over the red dust while his infant grandson was in his arms, those tears are not merely historical. They are, as the scholars of our tradition teach us, the origin of the tears we shed tonight. Ayatollah Misbah Yazdi explains. The reference again is in the write-up. The weeping of the noble Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, for the master of the martyrs, before the occurrence of Ashura, demonstrates that mourning for Imam Hussein is not a mere emotional reaction to a historical event. Rather, it is a divine and prophetic tradition. With these tears, the Prophet marked the path of guidance for the community until the day of resurrection. The Prophet's weeping was not a human moment of weakness. It was a sunnah, a prophetic practice established by divine command, marking the path for every generation that would come after. When we mourn Imam al-Hussein, we are not inventing a ritual. We are following the Prophet who mourned first, who mourned before anyone else could, who mourned while holding the very child that he was mourning for. And Imam Khamenei, may God rest his pure soul, gave this inheritance its most beautiful expression. Imam Khamenei says, this tear that you shed for Hussein ibn Ali is connected to the very tear that the great Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, shed in Medina. This tear is the sharp weapon of the Shia throughout history. The tear that falls in your eye tonight for Imam Hussein, it was in the Prophet's eye first. It was placed in a glass bottle by Salama. It turned to blood on the day the blood was shed. And as Imam Khamenei tells us, the tears we shed tonight are connected directly, not metaphorically, not symbolically, but connected to the tear the Prophet shed in Medina while holding his infant grandson against his chest. It was kept and carried and passed down through the centuries, through the prophets who wept before, through the believers who wept after, through every Muharram and every majalis and every heart that has ever broken for the son of Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra, until it reached us tonight in this call. So 8 links, 8 prophets and righteous souls, 8 forms of witness, 8 forms of grief, and running through all of them 2 threads that have never stopped. The first thread is the chain of the witness. Abel testified in the field. Noah called from the ark and learnt the covenant is not a birthright, that a son who carries the blood of a prophet but refuses the truth has chosen the mountain. Abraham spoke the covenant out loud. My prayer, my sacrifice, my living, my dying are all for God. And God deferred the blood from the mountain to the plain of Karbala, ransoming his grief with a grief greater than his own. John was beheaded for refusing to endorse the unlawful, and his blood boiled until retribution was sent. Zachariah was sawn through the tree that tried to protect him, and he wept for 3 days when God told him what would happen to Imam al-Husayn. Jesus testified from the cradle before he could walk. He wept at Karbala before the blood was shed, and was raised by God to be reserved as a living witness for the end of times. Hamza was mutilated in Uhud, and the Prophet stood over his body in the heaviest grief of his life. And the Prophet himself held the red earth of Karbala, gave it to Salama in a glass bottle, and wept for a grandson who was still an infant in his arms. The second thread is the chain of the oppressor. Hind chewed the liver at Uhud. Her grandson Yazid ordered the killing at Karbala. And said Zainab stood in Yazid's court and told him to his face, your mouth spat out the livers of the pure ones, and your flesh grew from the blood of the martyrs. The good tree and the cursed tree, the Shajara Tayyiba and the Shajara Mal'una, have been growing side by side since the very first day, and they have never stopped bearing their respective fruit. The school in Minab that bore the name of the good tree, where boys and girls alike were learning to read before missiles buried them, was struck in our own lifetime a mere few months ago. The 2 lines have never stopped meeting. Karbala is not an isolated event. As Ayatollah Jawadi Amali has told us this evening, it is an ontological and transhistorical reality with which all the friends of God are deeply connected. The prophets wept for it before it happened. The sky wept for it when it did. Imam Husayn's blood is still boiling in the veins of history, and it will not settle until the Imam of the age rises. And the tears in our eyes tonight, as Imam Khamenei taught us, are directly connected to the tears that the Prophet shed in Medina. Not one tear has ever been shed for Imam Husayn that was not first shed by a prophet. The grief is much older than we are. The chain is longer than we knew. The covenant that binds us to it is not a birthright, it is a daily struggle. And the criteria, as Imam Khomeini taught us, is our current state. The responsibility of the heir is to mourn with the seriousness of those who know what they carry, and to stand where the covenant asks them to stand, every morning, without the luxury of assuming that yesterday's standing is enough. Please give me a loud salawat. We move to the last point, the inherited tear and the responsibility of the heir. So we've traced the chain, we've heard the prophets weep. Now we must ask, what does this chain ask of us? Not in the abstract, not as theology. What does it ask of us tonight, in this room, in this city, in this Muharram? If the tear is inherited, if what we carry into Muharram is not our own private grief, but the grief of a chain that runs from Adam to the Imam of our age, then mourning is not optional and it is not casual. It is a covenantal responsibility. This is why Imam Khamenei spoke so insistently across the many years of his leadership about the quality of mourning, not only its quantity. It is not enough to weep. The question rather is, what are you weeping for? If you weep as an heir who understands the chain, who knows that the tear in your eye was in the eye of Zachariah and John's mother and the Prophet himself, then your tear is a continuation of the prophetic grief, and it has weight in the heavens. If you weep as a spectator who has wandered into someone else's sorrow, your tear is sincere, but it's disconnected from the covenant, and a disconnected tear over time becomes a ritual without a root. Last night we made a pact. we said that we would not use the word shaheed without understanding what it means. Tonight we add a second commitment. We will not shed the tear without understanding whose tear it is. The Ziyarat of Ashura, the greeting we recited a part of at the opening of this session, and that will be recited at the opening of every session, begins with peace upon Imam al-Husayn and upon the souls who have gathered in your courtyard. Those souls are the chain. When we greet Imam Husayn, we greet the inheritor of Abel, of Adam, of Abraham, of John, of Zachariah, of Jesus, of Hamza, of the Prophet, and so on. We greet the one in whom every previous testimony was gathered and completed. If we do not understand the chain, we do not understand the greeting. The ziyarat of warith, the ziyarah of the inheritor, makes this explicit. It opens by greeting Imam Husayn as the heir of Adam, the heir of Noah, the heir of Abraham, the heir of Moses, the heir of Jesus, the heir of Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon them all. This is not just decorative language. It is a theological claim, the same claim that we've been tracing tonight across 8 links and 8 prophets. Imam Husayn's witness is the sum of every witness before him. And our greeting of Imam Husayn is our acknowledgement that we understand the sum. When we say, peace be upon you, O heir of Adam, in Ziyarat Waritha, we are saying, we know that you are Abel's father. We know that you are Abel's heir. We know the testimony began in a field outside of Eden and ended in a plain in Iraq. We know the chain, and when we say, peace be upon the souls who have gathered in your courtyard, in Ziyarat Ashura, we are not only greeting the 72 companions who fell on the day of Ashura, we are greeting every soul in the chain, every prophet who wept, every witness who testified, every link that carried the covenant forward from the day God asked, am I not your Lord? And every soul answered, yes, we bear witness. And now the question to carry home. So last night we asked, when I have said shaheed, have I meant it? Tonight we add a second question. When I have wept for Imam al-Husayn, have I known whose tears I was shedding? If the answer is, I did not know, then tonight has given you the beginning of the knowledge. The tear is not yours alone, it's not ours alone. It was not born in your chest tonight. It was placed in the chain long before you arrived. It was wept by Adam over Abel. It was wept by Noah over a son who would not board. It was wept by Zachariah for 3 days in his sanctuary when God told him what would happen. It was wept by Jesus on the ground of Karbala when the deer around him wept. It was wept by the Prophet Muhammad over a handful of red-brown dust while his infant grandson lay in his arms. It was kept in a glass bottle by Salama, and it was given to all of you, to all of us, as an inheritance, which means it comes with the responsibility of an heir. Mourn with the seriousness of those who know what they carry. Do not waste the inheritance. Do not let the tear fall without knowing where it comes from. And do not imagine, as we said last night, and as we will say every night of this series, that the word shaheed, or the tear for Imam Husayn, belongs to you because you happen to have been born into this community. It does not belong to you by birthright. It belongs to you by covenant. And the covenant, as Imam Khomeini told us, is measured by your current state, not by your past, not by your lineage, not by the tears you shed last year. The question the covenant asks you tonight is the question it's always been asking since before the body was made. Where do you stand now? Tomorrow night, God willing, we enter the theology proper through the sharpest Shia thinker of the modern age on the subject of martyrdom, Shaykh Mutahhari, peace and blessings be upon him, and we discuss his 5 kinds of death. We alluded to them in the previous session. We will ask, if Imam Husayn is the culmination of all this witness, what kind of death was his? And the answer to that question will change the way we see everything that we have mourned for. Now we give the rest of the time to the one who has never left us. Every prophet we have named tonight was weeping before Imam Hussein was born. Listen now for the tear that was in their eyes.
I came to you last night. Did you think I would not come back? I came for Abel, for the first one, for the throat the earth had never met before, and the hollow the crow opened in the ground. Tonight I come for the ones who came after him. There are many of them. There have always been many of them. And the chain from Abel to my forefather Husayn is longer than your century knows, and heavier than any of your histories have bothered to lift. Tonight I will lift only a little of it, enough for you to feel the weight, enough for you to understand before we go any further, that what you carry into this Muharram is not yours. Before the body, before the cradle, before the first morning of the first world, he gathered us, all of us. You, the one listening in a dim room, me, the one behind the veils. My aunt Sayyida Zainab, my forefather Husayn, my forefather Abel. Your grandmother, her grandmother, the child not yet conceived, whose throat is already counted. Every soul that has lived in a body or will live in a body. He gathered us, and he asked one question. Am I not your Lord? And every one of us, every single one, answered with the first word the soul ever spoke, yes. Yes, we bear witness. That was the first testimony. That was where the word was born, not on earth before it. And every believer who has said the Shahada since, in any mosque, on any tongue, at any hour, is only remembering a promise they made in a language older than any language. The witnesses are not a new thing. The chain is not a new thing. The chain is the oldest thing on this earth. The first throat on this earth that was cut for saying, yes, I bear witness, after my brother Abel, was my forefather John. You call him John the Baptist. We call him Yahya, the living one. A name his father Zechariah was given for him by God when his father had long since given up asking. He told kings the truth. He stood in their doorways and said the one sentence kings cannot tolerate from any tongue. This is not lawful for you. And for that sentence, not for a crime, not for a theft, not for treason, for one sentence of tabi'in, for one clarification of the law of God at a royal door, they took his head. They brought it in a basin to a king as a favor to a dancer in the middle of a feast, and they set the head of the friend of God on the floor of a palace. And the scholars of my house have told you, and it is true, the blood of my forefather John did not cool in the basin where they placed it. It boiled. It boiled for 14 years. It would not rest. It would not settle. And do you know what made it rest at last? One thing. One only. The blood of my grandfather Husayn, peace and blessings be upon him, on the plain of Karbala. The moment that drop struck the earth, the blood in the basin stopped, because the chain that had opened at Abel had come at last to its fullness. The blood of every prophet that was ever unjustly spilled had been waiting in one basin after another for one of my forefathers to answer it. Husayn answered it. Husayn answered it. And still I have not spoken of his father, my forefather Zechariah, who waited so long for John that the world had already decided he would die childless, fled when his son was taken from him across a country that had no room for him anymore. And he came upon a tree that opened for him, a tree that for the length of one breath let a prophet of God step inside the living wood and be hidden. But they had already chosen their masters, and they found him. They came with a saw, and they set the teeth of the saw against the bark, and the tree that had opened for him could not stop what came next. And they sawed through the tree and the prophet inside it, and neither cried out, because the tree would not betray what it had sheltered, and the prophet would not give the saw the satisfaction of a sound. 2 martyrs in one stroke, the friend of God and the tree that had tried to be his door. I was not there, but I remember. And then my grandfather came. Peace and blessings be upon him, and upon his family, and upon his righteous companions. And when he came, when he climbed a hill called Uhud on a day the wind had already turned bad, and when he came back down, he found his uncle. He found my great-grand-uncle Hamza, the one they had called the Lion of God, the one who had carried the banner when no one else would carry it. He found him in the dust, his nose cut, his ears cut, his body hacked and his chest opened, and his liver taken out from inside him and placed in the mouth of a woman who chewed it and spat it out again, because even her hatred could not finish what her hatred had begun. The name of the woman was Hind. The name of her son was Muawiyah. The name of his son was Yazid. Do you see the line? Do you see, my brothers and sisters, that the house that cut the liver out of Hamza is the house that cut the head off of Husayn? The same house, the same hatred, 3 generations between them. And in the house of God, 3 generations is not very far. My grandfather stood over his uncle. He wept. The narrations say his face turned red with the weeping, and the redness did not leave his face for the rest of the day. And in the books I have read from behind these veils, the books the scholars of my house carried down one narrow generation at a time, it is said that the redness did not fully leave his face until the day his grandson was placed in his arms. The grandson he would name Husayn. When my forefather Husayn was still a child, a small, soft thing, who climbed onto my grandfather's back during prayer and would not be shifted until he was ready, Gabriel came, not with a command, not with a verse, with a handful of dust, a handful of red earth from a plain no one had yet named. He placed it in the palm of my grandfather, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and he said one sentence: "This is where your grandson will be killed." My grandfather wept, not loudly, not as a man who has been surprised, as a man who has received at last the piece of news he had been preparing for since he was a boy. He took the dust, he wrapped it in a cloth, he gave it to his wife, to Salama, may God be pleased with her, and he said to her, "Keep this. On the day you see this dust turn to blood, you will know that my grandson has been killed." She kept it. She kept it through 3 wars. She kept it through the death of her husband, the messenger of God. She kept it through the migration of an entire community and the rise of every enemy of the house. And on a Saturday afternoon in the month of Muharram, in the 61st year after the flight of the messenger of God, she opened the bottle, and the dust had turned to blood. She screamed, her neighbors came running, and she held the bottle out to them and she said the sentence the women of my house have always said when the day finally comes: "They have killed him. They have killed Husayn." I was not there, but I remember. My brothers, my sisters, hear what I have come to tell you tonight. There is not one tear that has ever been shed for Husayn that was not first shed by a prophet before my grandfather was named. Not one. Every tear you have ever wept in a majalis, every breaking of voice in a Nohe, every time a mother in this room has had to explain to a child why we wear black this month, every one of those tears is an inheritance. It was borrowed from the eye of Adam, who first knew what it was to lose a son, from the eye of Noah, who watched a son refuse the only ark God had made, from the eye of Abraham, who carried his own son to the stone, from the eye of Zechariah inside the tree, from the eye of the mother of John when they brought her son's head back to her house, from the eye of Jesus, peace and blessings be upon him, who spoke of the one who would come after him, from the eye of my grandfather, peace and blessings be upon him, when Gabriel placed the red dust in his open palm. The tear is not yours first, it was given to you by the chain. So when you weep tonight, and some of you will weep tonight, and some of you will not yet be able to, know that you are not producing grief. You are receiving it. You are being paid by the unseen what was deposited in the line of your fathers before the first word was ever spoken on this earth. Do not waste that payment. Do not mix it with the tears of your week. Do not spend it on the small disappointments of your life. The inherited tear is for one face only. You know whose? Peace be upon you, O John the Baptist. Peace and blessings be upon you. The first beheaded prophet after my brother Abel, whose blood boiled in the basin and would not rest, until my grandfather's blood fell on the plain of Karbala. Peace be upon you, O Zechariah. Peace and blessings be upon you, who stepped inside a tree and learned that no tree can hide the friend of God from the hand of those who have already chosen their masters. Peace be upon you, O my grandfather Muhammad. Peace and blessings be upon you and upon your family and upon your righteous companions, who wept over Hamza, who received the red dust, who held his grandson knowing what the earth already knew. Peace be upon you, O Hamza, the Lion of God. Peace and blessings be upon you, in whose liver the chain of the enemy first showed its teeth. Peace be upon you, O Salama, who kept the bottle. And peace upon every mother in every century who has kept a bottle like yours and waited 40 years for the dust to change. Peace be upon the 72 of Karbala, the heirs of every chain I have named tonight. Peace be upon the scholar martyrs whom our own age tried to silence. Shahid Motahari at the classroom door, Beheshti and his 70, who inherited the number of Karbala the way a son inherits a name. The brother and sister Sada in Najaf, and in this very year, Sayyid Ali Khamenei, who carried the red dust in his breast through 46 years of service, and returned it fasting to the Lord who had given it to him. Peace be upon the commanders of the caravan, Soleimani, Mournier, Mohandis, Nasrallah. Peace and blessings be upon them all. Peace be upon the children of Minab, whose tears are new, but whose inheritance is ancient. Peace be upon the children of Gaza, whose blood has joined the basin that has been boiling since Abel. And may the distance of God's mercy, the long, eternal, unappealable distance, be upon every hand that has ever cut a prophet from the first cut to the last. The hand that raised itself against Abel in the field, the hand that cut the head from my forefather John, the hand that set the saw against the tree of my forefather Zechariah, the hand that reached into the chest of Hamza and took his liver, and the hand of the woman who chewed it, and the hand of her son and her son's son, who completed 3 generations later what she had begun at the foot of Ahad. And every hand in our own time that has placed itself between a child and its next breath, that has dropped a bomb on a schoolroom at the hour of prayer, that has sold the blood of the innocent at the tables where the empires meet. The line of the hand that cuts is one line. The line of the throat that bears witness is one line. And the distance between them is God's. And it is long, and it is final. I was not there, but I remember. And I remain behind the veils until the permission is given, and the hearts are ready, and the 313 have gathered at last. Until then, sleep with the taper still lit. Keep the bottle on the shelf. The inherited tear is yours tonight. Do not waste it. Where is your brother?
Peace be upon Abel, who testified first. Peace be upon the prophets who wept before us. Peace be upon the Prophet Muhammad, who held the dust and knew. Peace be upon Salama, who kept the bottle. Peace be upon Husayn, the heir of them all. Peace be upon the Imam of our age, who remembers. Peace be upon you all, and upon your houses, and upon the tear that was inherited tonight and that will not be wasted. O God, you who have gathered every soul before the body was made and asked us one question, and every soul answered, yes, we bear witness. We return to you tonight, having traced the chain that you laid. We did not lay it, you did. From the covenant before time to the field of Abel, from the ark of Noah to the mountain of Abraham, from the basin of John to the tree of Zechariah, from the cradle of Jesus to Uhud, from the red earth in the prophet's palm to the glass bottle on the shelf of Salama. The chain is yours, every link is yours, and we are only servants trying to understand what you wove. We send our condolences and congratulations tonight to our father Adam and our mother Eve. Peace and blessings be upon them both. Condolences for a son lost in a field, and congratulations for a chain that began with his blood and has not stopped. We send our condolences and congratulations to our father Noah. Condolences for a son who chose the mountain, and the prayer that you teach us through his grief that the covenant is not a birthright but a daily struggle. We send our condolences and congratulations and peace to Abraham. Condolences for a blade that was stayed and a blood that was deferred, and congratulations that his word, my prayer, my sacrifice, my living, my dying are all for God, was spoken again at Karbala by his grandson's grandson, and will be spoken again when the Imam of the age rises. We send our peace to John the Baptist and his father Zechariah. Peace and blessings be upon them both. The prophet beheaded for one sentence of truth, and the prophet sawn through the tree that tried to hide him. Their blood is in the chain, their grief is in our tears tonight. We send our peace and blessings to Jesus, the son of Mary. May God hasten his return, who testified from the cradle, who wept at Karbala while the deer wept around him, who was raised by God as a living witness to be reserved for the end of times. His testimony is not finished. He will return. We send our condolences and congratulations to our master, the Prophet Muhammad. Peace and blessings be upon him, his family and righteous companions. Condolences for the red earth that was placed in his palm while his grandson was still an infant in his arms. And congratulations that the tear he shed in Medina has to this day not dried. It is still falling tonight in this very room, in every room where believers gather to remember his grandson. We send our peace to Salama, may God bless her soul, who kept the bottle, who waited, and who watched the dust turn into blood, and who cried out the sentence the women of the Prophet's house have always cried: they have killed Husayn. We send our peace to Imam al-Husayn, the heir of Adam, the heir of Abraham, the heir of Muhammad, in whom every testimony before him was gathered and completed. We greet him tonight with a greeting that is beginning to understand the chain. We're not there yet, but we are closer, God willing, than we were last night. And we send our peace to the Imam of our age. May our souls be his ransom and may God hasten his return, who carries the memory of every link, who remembers every drop of blood in every basin, who watches from behind the veil and waits for the day the blood of his grandfather will finally be settled by his own hand. O God, we send our peace and salutations to Hamza, the lion of Uhud, in whose body the line of the oppressor which first showed its teeth. And we send our peace to every witness of our own age, who has stood where Hamza stood and said what Abel said. Shaykh Mutahari, Ayatollah Bahashti, Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr, Bint al-Huda al-Sadr, Imam Sayyid Ali Khamenei, Haj Qasim Sulaimani, Haj Ahmad Maghniye, Haj Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, and countless others. May God rest their pure souls and raise their stations. And we send our peace to the children of Minab, both the boys and the girls and the teachers, who were buried beneath the good tree, and to the children of Gaza, whose blood has joined the basin that has been boiling since John and Abel. And may God's mercy be distant upon every hand that is cut from the first to the last. O God, you are the one who asked the question before time. You are the one who received the answer from every soul. You are the one who laid the chain link by link from Abel to this hour. Everything we have spoken of tonight is yours. The covenant is yours. The chain is yours. The tear is yours. And you placed it in our eyes, through the eyes of the prophets, so that we might carry it forward until the Imam you have appointed rises to settle what has not yet been settled. Accept this tear from us tonight. It is not ours. It is the inherited tear passed down from Adam, from Abraham, from the Prophet himself. We return it to you as heirs who are beginning to understand what they carry. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We are from God and to him we return. And we repeat your promise, an eternal promise for justice and a warning for the wrongdoers. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ. And the wrongdoers will soon know at what goal they will end up. And we add from the depths of everything we have learnt tonight, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. God is sufficient for us, and He is the best of guardians. Amen, O Lord, sustainer of the universes. Amen, O most merciful of the merciful. Wa akhiru da'wani alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
We now move into Nohe, our elegy for the evening. A Nohe is mourning poetry, sung and recited in lament for Imam Husayn. Peace and blessings be upon him and those who gave their lives at Karbala. It is not a performance to be watched. It is a grief to be shared. So please join in with your voice, with your hand upon your heart. Tonight's Nohe is I Saw Husayn.
I journeyed for 1,000 years, shackled in shame. Burning was I, blistered my soul, tortured in pain. Witnessed then I such a sight, burdened my eyes at the plight. I saw Husayn, I saw Husayn, I saw Husayn, I saw Husayn. I journeyed for 1,000 years, shackled in shame. Burning was I, blistered my soul, tortured in pain. Witnessed mine eye such a sight, burdened my eyes at the plight. I saw Husayn, I saw Husayn, I saw Husayn, I saw Husayn. Oh, my feet felt heat of burning sands, all the sin and shame upon my hands. I had searched to find a friendly face. Seems at last I'd found him in this place. Seemed at last I'd found him in this place. So I cried out, Master, it is I, the despised one of the Lord on high. For my life has fallen into sin. There is no to quench the thirst within. There is no to quench the thirst within. I journeyed for 1,000 years, shackled in shame. Burning was I, blistered my soul, tortured in pain. Witnessed then I such a sight, burdened my eyes at the plight. I saw Husayn, I saw Husayn, I saw Husayn, I saw Husayn. From my master not the slightest sound as he raised his head from off ground. not a drop of water could be seen, but his tears fell like a flowing stream. But his tears fell like a flowing stream. My eyes fixed upon this righteous scene. Oh, this man was joy and love serene. Oh, the veils of doubt fell from my eyes, for my heart now surely realized. For my heart surely had realized. I journeyed for 1,000 years, shackled in shame. Burning was I, blistered my soul, tortured in pain. Witness that I, such a sight, burdened my eyes at the plight. I saw Husayn, I saw Husayn, I saw Husayn, I saw Husayn. Husayn's dwelling truth within my soul, how repentant surely is my goal. How the lonesome put their trust in him, the broken-hearted feel a hope within. The broken-hearted feel a hope within. Oh, the joy flowing throughout my veins to embrace him on that holy plain. Oh, to kiss that sweet and loving face. Surely this must be a wondrous place. Surely this must be a wondrous place. For I had journeyed for 1,000 years, shackled in shame. Burning was I, blistered my soul, tortured in pain. Witnessed then I, such a sight, burdened mine eyes at the plight. I saw Husayn, I saw Husayn, I saw Husayn, I saw Husayn. Though I ran to touch his blessed hand, how my feet sank in the shifting sand. Try I might, no progress did I make. Oh, but I felt the earth begin to quake. Oh, I felt the earth begin to quake. Suddenly, as if the world were bow, the 7 heavens formed into a shroud. My master's face disfigured by his blood, silenced I, though screaming where I stood. Silenced I, though screaming where I stood. I turned away, the sight I could not bear, the stench of evil filling all the air. My beloved laid out on the dust, the holy path, the only one to trust. The holy path, the only one to trust. I heard a voice so gentle and so sweet. Chains were bound around her hands and feet. Beauty surely is all I have seen. Were the words that saved me from my dream. Were the words that saved me from my dream. I awoke, but in a pool of tears, all my sins were gone from all the years. Through Husayn, my faith had been restored, a perfect standing now before my Lord. A perfect standing now before my Lord. I journeyed for 1,000 years, shackled in shame. Burning was I, blistered my soul, tortured in pain. Witness then I such a sight, burdened mine arms at the plight. I saw Husayn, I saw Husayn, I saw Husayn, I saw Husayn. Now awoke, my heart is not afraid, for the journey that my soul has made, for that misery at Karbala enables us to love and trust Allah. For He taught us all the way to fight the deceiver who would steal our right to bow unto a righteous Lord and to dwell before a holy God. For the love of God must dwell again in the hearts of those who love Husayn. Let us rise above the worldly call. Let us teach His truth to one and all. Let us teach His truth to one and all. Peace be unto you, O sweet Husayn, and bring peace to those who call your name. All creation needs your holy face. Truly you are found in every place. Peace be unto you, O sweet Husayn, and bring peace to those who call your name. All creation needs your holy face. Truly you are found in every place. Truly you are found in every place. I journeyed for 1,000 years, shackled in shame. Burning was I, blistered my soul, tortured in pain. Witnessed then I such a sight, burdened mine eyes at the plight. I saw Husayn, 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 I saw Husayn.
And now, our Ziyarat Ashura. A ziyarah is a greeting across time. We stand before Imam Husayn, peace and blessings be upon him, as though at his very side, and we renew our allegiance. Ziyarat Ashura is the visitation of the day of Ashura, preserved from Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them, salutation upon the martyrs, and disavowal of the oppressors. You will hear our poetic English rendering of it, faithful in meaning, clear in word. And its disavowal is not of any people or sect, it is of tyranny itself, the same line that runs from Cain and Pharaoh down to Yazid. To understand more of what you're hearing, what this ziyarah is, and the meaning behind its names, there is a short explainer on our website, a link in the description. Please receive it with reverence.
Peace be upon you, O Abba Abdullah. Peace be upon you, O son of the messenger of God. Peace be upon you, O chosen of God and son of his chosen. Peace be upon you, O son of the commander of the faithful. Peace be upon you, O son of Fatima, mistress of the women of all the worlds. Peace be upon you, O blood whose claim is God's, and son of that same claim, the solitary one, his due not yet redeemed. Peace be upon you, and upon the souls that came to rest about you. Upon you all. From us, be the peace of God. For as long as we remain, and as long as night and day endure. O Abba Abdullah, immense is the calamity and bitter. Great is the wound of your loss upon us and upon all the people of Islam. Great and grievous is your affliction in the heavens upon all who dwell there. May the mercy of God be distant from a people who laid the first foundation of injustice and tyranny against you, O people of the house. May the mercy of God be distant from a people who drove you from your station and tore you from the ranks in which God himself had placed you. May the mercy of God be distant from a people who killed you, and from those who smoothed their road and gave into their hands the power to make war upon you. We disown them before God and before you, them and their partisans, their followers, their friends. We are at peace with all who are at peace with you, and at war with all who war against you, until the day of resurrection. May the mercy of God be distant from the house of Ziyad and the house of Marwan, from the clan of Umayyah, every one of them, from the son of Marjana, from Umar, son of Saad, from Shimr, and from a people who saddled their horses and bridled them and masked their faces to make war upon you. By our fathers and our mothers, for you, we would give them. Great is our grief for you, and so we ask of God, who ennobled your station and honored us through you, that He grant us to seek the requital of your blood at the side of an Imam divinely aided, from the household of Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him and his family. Make us, in your sight, honored through Husayn. Peace be upon him, in this world and the next. We draw near to God and to His Messenger, and to the Commander of the Faithful, and to Fatima, and to Hassan, and to you, through our love and loyalty to you, and through our disavowal of the one who fought you and raised against you the standard of war, and of the one who laid the first foundation of injustice and built his house upon it. We disown them before God and before you. So we ask of God, who honored us with knowing you and knowing those who love you, that He place us with you in this world and the next, that He set firm for us in your presence a footing of truth, that He bring us to the praised station that is yours with God, and that He grant us to seek our requital at the side of a guiding Imam, manifest and speaking with the truth from among you.
O God, make our living the living of Muhammad, and the family of Muhammad, and our dying the dying of Muhammad,
and the family of Muhammad. O God, this is a day on which the clan of Umayyah rejoiced and counted itself blessed, and the son of the devourer of livers, the one cast far from mercy, son of the one cast far from mercy, upon your tongue, and the tongue of your prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, in every place where your prophet stood.
O God,
let your mercy be far from Abu Sufyan and Muawiyah, and Yazid son of Muawiyah, upon them from you, be that exile from mercy, for all the ages without end. This is a day on which the house of Ziyad and the house of Marwan rejoiced at their killing of Husayn. God's blessings be upon him.
O God,
multiply upon them the distance of your mercy and your punishment. O God, let your mercy be distant from the first who wronged the right of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, and from the last who followed him upon that road.
O God,
let your mercy be distant from the band who fought against Husayn and sided with his killing and pledged to it and followed in it.
O God,
let your mercy be distant from them, all of them. Peace be upon you, O Aba Abdullah, and upon the souls that came to rest about you. Upon you from us be the peace of God, for as long as we remain, and as long as night and day endure. And may God never make this the last of our covenant with you, the last of our coming to you. Peace be upon Husayn, and upon Ali son of Husayn, and upon the children of Husayn, and upon the companions of Husayn. O God, single out the first oppressor for the distance of your mercy from us. Begin with him first of all, then the second, the third, the fourth. O God, let your mercy be distant from Yazid the fifth, and from Ubaidullah son of Ziyad, and the son of Marjana, and Umar son of Saud, and Shimr, and the house of Abu Sufyan, and the house of Ziyad, and the house of Marwan, until the day of resurrection. O God, to you belongs all praise, the praise of those who give thanks to you even in their affliction. All praise is God's for the immensity of our sorrow. Grant us the intercession of Husayn on the day we come before you, and set firm for us a footing of truth in your presence with Husayn and the companions of Husayn, those who poured out their very lifeblood for Husayn, peace be upon him.
And there we close the second night. Thank you for being here and for the attention you've given. And before we pray, a gentle ask: subscribe, like, and share so these nights can find the people still searching for them. May God accept this gathering, write us among the faithful witnesses, and let the covenant we inherited live on through us. And may He protect and strengthen our Wali al-Faqih, Imam Sayyid Mujtaba Khamenei. May God protect him until the rising of the awaited one. The question we are carrying does not let go of us. The Prophet's tears, peace and blessings be upon him, were tears for a brother yet to be lost. So we ask again tonight, where is your brother? Good night, and may God keep you all.